Hey, welcome back to the Group Project Podcast. This is episode number 84. And I told this guest before the show, this is the first guest we've had from the great state of Alabama. And her name is Dr. Dil Uswatte. Did
You
I say
got
it
it.
right?
You got it. You nailed it.
Okay. Ooh, okay. That was we talked before the show. She coached me up on how to say her last name. I think I'm going to go with Dil the rest of the way, if that's okay.
Not a problem.
Okay. So Dil is the elementary principal at Rocky Ridge Elementary, located in Hoover City Schools in Hoover, Alabama, just outside of Birmingham. And the reason I reached out to Dil was because in 2020, she was named the elementary principal of the year in Alabama. Congratulations on that honor. That is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I cold emailed her and said, "Hey, would you mind hopping on the show?" And we had to reschedule once. I appreciate you being flexible with me. But wow, you have such a story here. You got we talked for about, I don't know, 10 minutes before the show started. And I learned all kinds of very, very unique things about you, Dil. But why don't we start with you to sharing your educational experience, your leadership background, and how you got to where you're at.
Well, that could take the whole show. So I'll start with when I was born in Germany, and when I was 2, we immigrated to Canada. So my parents decided to either come to the United States or Canada. Canada said yes first. So I grew up in Canada. I attended Queen's University, which is in Kingston, Ontario. Did a degree in biology first, thinking I was med school bound, like so many other Asian Canadians and Americans, and very quickly realized that that's not what I wanted to do, and pursued my dream of becoming an educator. And so when I was at Queen's, I finished my degree in biology, then did another program and got my degree in education as well. 2 years later, I met my husband, who was working in Alabama. He's a clinical psychologist at UAB, and he was the reason why I moved to Alabama.
Okay.
And when I came here, the plan was always that I was going to go back to school to get my master's. That was always the dream. What I did not know was that what kind of master's I wanted to pursue. So initially I was hoping to find a degree in growing student leadership, not teacher leadership, but student leadership. That didn't exist. So I took the path of teacher leadership, got my master's, and then eventually thought, you know what, let's go for the summit. Let's climb that Mount Everest and pursue a doctorate. So at UAB again, did my specialist degree and then my doctorate in educational leadership.
Okay, so you go down, you go from Canada, you meet your husband, you move down to the Birmingham area. Is UAB in Birmingham? Is that correct?
It is. It is. It is located in the heart of Birmingham, right downtown. And it's UAB stands for University of Alabama at Birmingham.
Okay, I kind of figured that after. I do know my sport. We talked a little bit before. I couldn't help myself. We talked a little football before the show started. I know I kind of answered my own question when I asked that. So okay, so you made your way down now to that area. Now talk to me about, were you a teacher at that point? And then you got your doctorate. Maybe just kind of give us that timeline of teacher to administration.
Right. So I began my teaching career in Canada at the high school level. I actually taught a combination of math and science courses. And then when I moved here, I was thinking, okay, I want to continue as a high school teacher, could not find a high school job, but there was a middle school job.
Oh,
And
okay.
it turns out I was
Wow.
always meant to be a middle school teacher. So I started my career here at a school called Berry Middle School, which is also Hoover City Schools, phenomenal school, and taught 8th grade mathematics. And just loved it. I mean, absolutely fell in love with teaching math full time and teaching it specifically at Berry Middle School. And I think that school was just so incredible in terms of the support from the administration. Honest to goodness, it was probably that principal who inspired me to really think about becoming a principal myself at some point. So long story short, just really enjoyed my time there. In the course of my 9 years at Berry, the Milken Foundation found me and recognized me as a National Milken Award educator.
Wow.
And
Wow.
after that recognition, it seemed like all kinds of doors opened up,
Sure.
including people wanting me to move into administration. And that's how I kind of came to Rocky Ridge. Dr. Carrington, the principal of Rocky Ridge, she was like, we need a teacher who is really passionate about mathematics and to help us to love math. And that was my initial charge when I came to Rocky Ridge. And I'm very proud to say that working with these incredible teachers here, I mean, we brought up the scores like 20% within a
Wow.
year.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal ride. Again, I credit so much of that though to Dr. Carrington and to this incredible staff in this building. To, you know, even to this day, they are amazing, amazing people.
Okay, I already have so many questions for you. About this 20% rise, we got to come back to that. About going from high school to middle school to elementary, we got to come back to that. But tell me about, you told me before the show,
Uh-huh.
how you went into that principal role. It was not your normal, like, start in August type of thing. Talk about your transition to being the principal of Rocky Ridge Elementary School.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, my journey was really transitioning from the assistant principal role to being the principal. And I think one of the reasons why the superintendent at that time chose me to take on this role is he saw the work I was able to do with this staff, with Dr. Carrington. And as I pitched it to him, look, you know, the difference between me and another candidate is I've already established relationships with these people for the past 4 years. We will be able to hit the ground running when I became principal. And that's exactly what we did. We just continued on the legacy and the work that had been done before me. And again, was able to just keep on climbing in that northeast direction. So I would say the challenge for me though, you know, the staff knew me as an assistant principal.
Hmm.
What they didn't know me as yet was the principal.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, Jared, it took me about 3 years to really realize the difference between
Hmm.
leading as an assistant principal and leading as a principal. What I had not done, and my third year, I'll never forget my third year. My third year was the year that I figured it out. It was my
Okay.
hardest year, no question. And what I realized I had not done was I had not established a shared vision. And I think that's why my year 3 was so hard, because I was still kind of acting like an assistant principal instead of a principal who was there to lead. And I finally figured that out after a lot of challenges in my third year that, hey, Dil, this is where vision comes into play. And you need to establish that quickly or you're not going to survive as a principal.
So how did you establish that shared vision?
Right.
This is
Yeah.
great. I love where you're going with this, that so many people I've talked to in the audience for this is, you know, up and coming leaders, experience, you know, principals, assistant principals. And I love how you described that, like that third year was kind of your awakening. Like what specifically did you do, or what, what were those specific moments that you remember?
So I did a little bit of a survey, if you will, and a very informal survey. I went to students, principals, excuse me, students, parents, teachers, and I said, hey, what's our vision? Just, you know, because we had a vision statement, we had a mission statement, we had all that stuff, but no one could tell me what our vision was. And it was so clear that we didn't know because we didn't talk about it. It's not that it wasn't there. It's just we didn't talk about it. We didn't make that the focus or the funnel or the lens through which to make every decision. And that was my fault as the principal. I had never put that as the lens to lead and to help us to grow. So we were all doing our thing. We were all teaching. We were all doing what we were supposed to do, but there wasn't a common vision. So I started to ask questions and say, well, never mind what we've written. What do you think is important in our vision? Like, what are our shared values? And so I got input from our parents, our students, our teachers. And what we did was that summer, I took about 8 or so people. I took all the input that we gathered from all these stakeholders. And I said, this is what people have said is important, that this is what we feel is valuable for what we're trying to do here at our school. Mm-hmm. So we looked at that. We looked at our previous mission and vision statement, and we rewrote it together based on all this new input. Then on top of that, what we also did not have were common shared expectations for behavior. Because one of the big struggles in that third year was, which I don't think is uncommon, we had a higher amount of student discipline issues. Mm-hmm. Why? Well, I think it was because we were tired. There was a lot of challenges. We didn't have a common lens. So we were all just kind of doing our own thing. There was too much chaos. So coming together and redefining where we want to go helped to create, like I said, that long-term path to where we are now. So it was an incredible exercise, and the end result was, I think we defined what we wanted together. You know, there's this great Japanese proverb. I don't know if you've heard it. It actually was introduced to me only recently, but it goes something like this: a vision without a plan is a dream, and a plan without a vision is a nightmare. So I think my issue was, I came in, you know, when the superintendent asked me, well, what is your plan for Rocky Ridge when you become principal? And I was like, oh yeah, I think we need to have a STEM or STEAM focus. Like, I think that's where we're heading as a society and as a world. So that's going to be my focus. So I had sort of a plan of what I want to do, but what I hadn't really established with everyone else was the why. Like, why is this important? Mm-hmm. And so coming together, one of the big takeaways was we all agreed, number one, we are not here to just create learners to deal with what's going on in Hoover. We wanted to create global citizens, responsible global citizens.
Okay.
We also knew that our future the future we're trying to create for these kids would not be beneficial if we didn't help them to be persistent problem solvers. So, you know, that was another big part of our vision statement, if you will. Mm-hmm. Those were two sort of big ideas that we wanted to cultivate. That was our why. And then from that, it was super easy to come up with our mission statement, which kind of led to our what and our how. Are you familiar with Simon Sinek by any chance?
Of course. Yeah.
So there's this great podcast. And interestingly enough, one of the other things I'm working on now is I'm leading some other educators in the greater Birmingham area through TED Ed educators. And we are currently working on a project with this group called the Powell Lab to kind of take this time. I mean, right now with COVID, this is such a beautiful time to like almost reinvent education, right? So we're going through trying to figure out, okay, what have we learned from this pandemic? What can we do differently? And we're starting with first establishing, well, what's our why? Like, why is this work important? So we've been studying the work of Simon Sinek for a little bit of time right now, and so excited to kind of continue on that pathway of nailing down that why and then getting to the hows.
Wow, that was a great, you hammered all the questions I was going to ask you. I mean, you were anticipating what I was going to ask you, what specific some of those vision statements were. Here's two questions I have for you then, because I've heard that. I love how you laid all that out. The first question is, so you laid that out like 3 years or 4 years ago, because that was your third year. You're in your seventh year now. How have you reinforced, or how have you reinforced that vision, that mission these last 4 years? Has it changed? Has it stayed the same? Kind of explain that a little bit, how things have gone since you had that awakening during year 3.
So every year starting off, number one, our very first year after redefining that mission and vision was making sure, almost like a PR company, that we sold the vision and the mission to everyone. I mean, we made shirts with the vision statement.
Okay.
We actually came up with our first ever motto because, remembering a vision and mission, I mean, those are statements, right? But how could we summarize that into one statement that all of us, even a 5-year-old, would remember? And we came up with the motto of "We make our world rock." In other words, it's all of our responsibilities and that we can have this impact globally if we choose to. So, really pushing that mission and vision and then expanding on it. Then again, every year using that as the lens of making decisions. For example, we realize, okay, what can we do if it is important? We want to create these globally competitive students. What is out there? What are the skills that they're going to need? And we had already figured out that STEAM or STEM was going to be important. So that led us to actually trying to apply for international STEM accreditation through Advanced Ed,
Wow.
now known as Cognia. So probably 2 years after that mission and vision statement was developed, we applied for and got international STEM accreditation. So again, that was because we had established our mission and vision. We also, like I said, we use that as the focus for understanding how can we support our kids so that it's not about discipline, but teaching our kids. Ironically, our school district decided to implement what's known as positive behavior intervention supports, or PBIS. The cool thing was we had already come to that phase a year before the district even. So we were ready with that. So, we looked at the discipline, we looked at the academics, we looked at who we are as educators and what we wanted to do with our students to make this incredible school.
So you just talked about something my second question, which is that alignment with district vision and mission. A lot of leaders I've spoken with want to do exactly like you just said. Like, as a building, we wanted to get feedback from all the stakeholders and create this mission statement, this vision for our building. However, they find there's sometimes alignment with what the district wants to do can be difficult because maybe the district leaders have a different idea. Can you explain maybe how that worked in your system in terms of that alignment with what you're doing and with what the district is doing?
Yeah. So when we were working that summer on defining our vision and mission, the one thing that we took into consideration is, what are our district objectives? Are they in alignment with them or are they not? And to be honest with you, Jared, I think any great school, if they're not in alignment with their district, you're going to be fighting the current in the wrong way. So we studied the district mission and vision statement and realized that our values were in fact aligned. So that was a very important. And I think I would say our specific vision and mission supports our district vision and mission as well.
Okay. I don't want to go to, this is great. I love what you're talking about. I don't want to go, I want to make sure I hit on that, go back to that 20% gain that you showed kind of in that year when you transitioned to leadership. Can you share? People probably are like, okay, how did you do it? What is the secret? How did you make such a big gain in that 1 year or maybe in that short period of time? What can you share about how you saw such significant gains in your assessment scores?
So I'm going to credit this back to Dr. Carrington, the principal, because again, remember, her why for hiring me was to find someone who could help the teachers to love math. So that was she was brilliant in the sense that she gave me a laser focus of making that my mission. I mean, she took away a lot of other responsibilities that a typical assistant principal would have to do, like, discipline and inventory and custodial tasks and challenges. She said, Dil, I need you to have the laser focus of curriculum and instruction, specifically mathematics. So I came in and I said, okay, how can I help teachers to love math? Well, we did intensive PD. We read a book, in fact, called Learning to Love Math by Dr. Willis. studied. It was a fantastic book that also talked about sort of understanding math and brain science, if you will. And that was, early on where brain science was really, just coming to be. And so the teachers bought in. We then looked at what we were doing and where we wanted to go. We looked at test results and realized, one of the reasons why our scores are not where we want to do is we're not able to teach everything that has high point value on the assessment until after the test. So I spend that year working with the teachers to kind of change the pacing guide. And guess what? When you're able to teach it, it's no wonder that kids can then do well because they were taught how to do it. So we spend a lot of time sort of building this like love affair, if you will, with math. And I really do think because we established our why, that first it has to start with us as educators appreciating the subject and knowing and believing that we could do this, that I think helped us to move forward. And again, I just want to say 100%, it is the teachers in this building who are phenomenal. I mean, I can't say enough good things about them. They are just incredible people who believe so passionately that our children can do just about anything and are so willing to work with each other that we were able to move forward. So again, totally want to credit my predecessor for cultivating and creating that environment where people want to share and people want to move forward.
What does a normal day look like for you?
That's
Such a
a
thing.
normal day. I don't know if I have quote a normal day. Every day is so different, Jared, to be honest. I try to make my normal day the focus be on students, like getting into classrooms, seeing the kids, even if it's just a few minutes in a room, just seeing what they're doing. So I know how to support our teachers, what we need, to spend money on. If I get lucky, I get to teach a class every so often or work with a student in the hallway. That's always the icing on the cake. But unfortunately, there are also things that distract from that, like, taking care of a burning issue elsewhere, or I have kind of like my predecessor, Dr. Carrington, have given sort of the reins to our assistant principal, Mrs. Malpass, to bear the focus of curriculum and instruction and kind of take care of everything else. So I do a lot of different things, including, meeting with what we call our instructional coaching team, which consists of our math coach, reading coach, the assistant principal, our technology coach, kind of making sure we know what is the plan, what is our why, and our how, and what we're going to do to continue to grow academics.
Let me make sure I got that right then. You actually handle the discipline, is that correct? And you free up your assistant principal to do the curriculum work?
That's correct.
Okay, that's not a normal setup.
No. And to be honest with you, again, what I learned from working with Dr. Carrington was the importance of having someone who has that laser focus on curriculum instruction, right? Because at the end of the day, we want students to be able to have increased achievement. Well, if you don't have someone who can have that laser focus, it's almost impossible. And again, when I was the assistant principal, I got to be the one who had that laser focus. And then I moved back into this role of kind of taking care of the other things. This is not to say that our assistant principal doesn't help with the discipline, doesn't help with everything else. She's able to do everything else. In fact, I want to always make sure that she has that ability to do everything. But yes, she has that laser focus. Mind you, I'm still very much a part of that decision-making team as to what we do for curriculum instruction improvements.
So as I got prepared for what I always try to do with every guest is I go and Google search their name and I read up any stories I can about them. And there's a couple questions I had a chance to read when you received your award for being the 2020 Principal of the Year. And there's two questions I want to ask you about from that write-up that kind of caught my eye. And the first is what you were just talking about. The first is that there was a comment either from you or from somebody else who was interviewed about growing leaders in the building, about you really want to make sure that others are able, you empower others. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? You've done a great job of describing how you empower that assistant principal to take a lot of the curriculum and instructional role. How else do you develop leaders in your building?
So I would say again, if you were to visit my building, I think you would notice that there is a very strong sort of family atmosphere where they're part of our growth and development. So we have lots of different layers and levels of being able to grow shared leadership. So for example, every team, there's a team leader. We have a teacher that might take on the math leadership for their team. We have another person whose laser focus is reading leadership on their team. So there's lots of different opportunities to lead. So that's the first thing I'm going to talk about. I think a good leader in my position is going to create opportunities for people to contribute, to both give ideas and to then make things happen. So again, there's lots of different ways to do that. I will also go back and say one more thing. I think it's important to hire the right people as well, that want to be leaders as well. And again, if you were to come into this building, you would see almost everybody in some capacity is being a leader, to help us to continue to grow upwards. So again, giving those opportunities, supporting them. For example, before a meeting, if there's a teacher who's going to give a presentation, I will sit with them ahead of time and say, all right, what is your plan? How are you going to approach the situation? I even tell them, I said, look, I want you to know before I give a talk, I'll go stand in front of the mirror and pretend to give the talk. Let me be the mirror for you.
Okay.
So I'll be the mirror for them, help them in any which way to help them feel comfortable to lead.
Oh, that's cool. I like that story. I'm the second question I had about the article that I read was, it sounds like it was a big surprise when you found out that you had won. And I think the exact award is the National Distinguished Principal Award. And I always get a little confused, but either way, it sounds like it was a surprise. I mean, I could see the picture of you in tears, who wouldn't be, but can you kind of just describe how that all went down? And did you really have no clue that you were going to be selected?
Well, I will say this. I thought I had a good chance when it went from 10 finalists down to 3.
Okay.
And, the panel came to visit the school, and they interviewed a group of parents, a group of teachers, a group of students. And I had heard stories. So first of all, I have to say that in itself was such a gift and reward, understanding what was said by so many of the different stakeholders in terms of praise for the work that I had done. So that was one piece. But to be honest with you, I also play a role on the state level leadership in terms of administration. So I was supposed to be attending a meeting that day where they would be announcing who was the winner of this thing. So seeing it was that morning and I didn't know, I thought, well, obviously it wasn't me, because they would have gone to present already at that person's school before this. What I did not know was that they had intentionally delayed that meeting so that they could come to my school first thing before that meeting. And what I also did not know was that the head of class, which is our Council of Leaders of Alabama Schools, had contacted our assistant principal, Mrs. Malpass, a week before to say, hey, this is happening. We'd like to surprise her. And let me just tell you, once again, Mrs. Malpass's faculty, with less than a week, put together this huge surprise in the gym. I mean, when I walked in, there were banners, and there were cheerleaders. I'm like, wait a minute, when did we get cheerleaders? I didn't know we had cheerleaders. I mean, it was like the biggest pep rally. And I was just so overwhelmed walking into this room with all of these incredible students, staff, my predecessor, Dr. Carrington, Dr. Wheaton, like all these people who had played a pivotal role in becoming an administrator, they were all there. So it was amazing. It was amazing.
So that, I mean, you seem like a very in tune principal. Like I would have to imagine they had to be super sneaky to pull all that off, because I feel like you would know what's going on in your building. And you're kind of laughing and nodding your head there. Like, that's pretty impressive to pull that off behind the principal's
Yeah,
behind
no,
your back.
they did an incredible job. And actually, it turns out that when I was visiting classrooms, there was one group working on the banner. And so they quickly got the radio and they're like, abort, abort. They made up an issue in the office, so I had to come back to the office. I mean,
Oh,
they were really good at
that
pulling
is
it off.
funny. That's good. That's good. Okay, so you mentioned like getting classrooms. You mentioned you're focused on the why. What other professional practices do you use that you would recommend to others?
Oh, all right, big one here. You know, I think when you are sort of at the forefront of an organization, you have an opportunity to inspire, and I use that word so often. In fact, my personal mantra, if you will, that I've shared with anyone that listen is, it is so important for all of us to take the time to inspire and be inspired. I kind of learned that, I think, from my mom, who really did that for me. Like, she would challenge me to sort of acknowledge what was going around me,
Mhm.
and to take that time to thank people when they did something great. Um, so I think, again, as the head of an organization, or head's not the right word, but you know, in the forefront of that organization, that it's important to take that time to inspire personally, but also to notice what's happening in the building and be inspired. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, you might have seen, one of the things we did was we did this thing called the Penny Project.
Mm.
And if you want to know more about the Penny Project, I will tell you to go to www.powerofapenny.com. That's our website where we tracked this initiative. But we had a goal of taking the time as a school to acknowledge people that inspired us, and to even give them a penny for their inspiration. But more on that at that website. But again, like I said, I think when you are a leader, you intentionally look for ways to motivate and keep the fire burning in a positive way to do the important work that we must do as educators, especially now when there's so much negativity around us. Like, you've got to be that beacon of light, I think, for your folks, and to find ways to fuel their fires to keep going forward.
So when you notice those, I love what you're saying. I completely agree. Like, noticing the good things that are going on, and what I've been trying to go to the website here real quick, but maybe just fill us in. Like, what do you do when you notice those good things are going on?
You know, we have lots of different ways to acknowledge what's going on. Like, for example, one of the things that we did, actually, this was in line with our PBS efforts as well, is students, teachers, they can fill out a little, it's hard to say, I'm so
Mhm.
sorry,
Yep.
like a
Yep.
little
Okay. Yep.
staff recognition ticket. And students or whoever are able to nominate someone and say, hey, I noticed this person doing X, Y, and Z. Every week, we recognize two educators. And I say the word educator because in our building, it's not just the teachers, it's the support staff, which includes our nurses, our aides, our custodians, our support staff. Any adult in this building can be recognized. And so again, two teachers a week, or two, I should say, educators a week are recognized. Then there are shout outs that I do in the beginning of the week and the end of the week, of things that people have done just to thank or praise them. You know, if I visit a classroom, sometimes I'll leave a note of praise to that teacher. There's lots of different things that we do just to acknowledge one another. And again, I think it's so important that teachers or the educators or everybody in that building or your building has a way of acknowledging one another. And our staff do a good job of building our family and remembering that we are a family first.
You did a really good job earlier in the interview about explaining that, like that third year, kind of what you discovered about really being a true leader of a building.
Yeah.
So my question is, it's like, knowing what you know now, what would be your advice to yourself going into the first year of being a school principal? So you did a great job of outlining like that, finding your why and laying
Yeah.
that out to your staff. Besides that, what other piece of advice, if you go back and do year one all over again,
Yeah.
what advice would you give yourself?
To be honest with you, it would be that why piece though.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
in that podcast by Simon Sinek, he said, people buy your why. They don't buy your what. They buy into your why.
Mhm.
And I really do believe that I would have been even that much stronger had I established not only my why, but also our group why. I think that was the missing piece, to be honest with you.
Okay. Okay. I was going to ask you about this. I did not ask you before the show. I hope this is okay, but one of we're having a great conversation here, and I know those of you who can't, you can't see us on the video here, but you're a female minority, right? In a position that is often dominated by, white, well, maybe not the elementary level, but there's a lot of white males or just white females.
Yeah.
Has that, talk about anything, has that been difficult for you? Have there been things you've had to overcome? Just anything you can share about that, if you don't mind. And you're kind of nodding your head yes. I'm hoping you can share a little bit of perspective about being a minority in a non-minority dominated field.
Yeah. So, my mother always told me to surround yourself by like-minded folks where there is greatness, where you have opportunities. And I feel so very blessed to have come into Hoover, where when I arrived here 20 some odd years ago, it was still an environment where people were wanting to be on the cutting edge, where they were willing and wanting to provide all that was necessary for you to get to your next level.
Mhm.
So from the get-go, again, I'm going to credit this back to Dr. Wheaton, who was the one who hired me. From the moment I walked into her building for that interview, she recognized right away that I had gifts to share. And so she gave me that opportunity. Had it not been for her, quite honestly, I don't know what would have happened.
Mhm.
So, people were willing and wanting to recognize what I had to offer. And it just went on from there. Like I said, she created a school environment where I could have shared leadership, where I could grow those skills. And because she gave me that chance, people were starting to pay attention to what I was doing, which is again why I think I got selected to be a Milken educator. So those opportunities were given because I was in an environment where people cared about growing teachers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
And,
does.
and I will say this though, Jared, when I was even at the National Distinguished Principal ceremony, and so we had sort of the national get together in Chicago, and I looked around though, and you're right, like I looked around and it was me and one other Asian man, and that was it. There was no other Asians to be seen. In fact, even just from a diversity standpoint, there was not a lot of diversity. And it made me wonder why. Why is that? I'm not sure I have an answer
Yeah.
to that, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. But again, I am so grateful to where I live that I was given those
Cool.
opportunities.
That's cool. Well, I always like to give all the questions ahead of time, and that just popped into my head. I mean, I'm just impressed with the story you've got. You've got so many cool ideas, and I just felt like I had to ask that. I appreciate you kind of going down that
Yeah.
path with me. So, hey, if you're joining us late, I am speaking with Dr. Dil Uswatte. Did
You
I
got
say
it.
that right?
You got it. Yes.
Oh gosh, I sorry about that. So she is the 2020 National Distinguished Principal of the Year from Alabama. She is the elementary principal at Rocky Ridge Elementary in Hoover, Alabama. So hey, we're gonna jump into some of these quick hitters here.
Okay.
Okay, and hopefully you had a chance to see those as well. So if we are in the Hoover, Alabama area, what's one place we've got to check out?
All right. That's the easy one for me. It was actually the first place that I visited, and it's the Birmingham Civil Rights Museum. It is internationally known. It is an incredible place to really understand the history of this area, where we have been and where we want to go as a greater Birmingham city area.
Okay. Do you have a favorite restaurant in the area?
I do, and I ate there just yesterday.
Oh,
So
nice.
there is this little. I mean, literally, it used to be a gas station. It's called the Hoover Mart, and it is a Thai restaurant, and it is like zero frills, but they have the best Thai food, which is my favorite cuisine.
Awesome. That sounds really good right now as we're getting close to the dinner hour here. So, what is one sneaky good purchase that you have made that has most improved your life?
The sneaky purchase. This is gonna sound crazy, but a good pair of running shoes. So I was always, I mean, I'm not the kind of person who spends a lot of money. So I would just buy, cheap running shoes. And then one day I bought a pair of Nike running shoes, and it's like, oh, the heavens opened up. It was so comfortable. I could exercise, so much better. So that was really awesome.
Now, how did you do much research of these Nike running shoes? Did you just happen to stumble upon them at the store? Like, how did you pick these specific shoes?
I don't honestly remember. I think I just walked into a Nike store and told myself, just spend the money on yourself, girl. Just do it. Ironically, just do it.
There you go, Nike. You can send all the royalties.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Okay, so far you've mentioned a couple books. The Simon Sinek, I think, Start with Why was one. You mentioned the Penny. I think that's a book as well. Is there one other book that has greatly influenced your life?
Yeah, so I would say, and I think this is what really got me going as a really incredible educator. When I came to Hoover, they gifted us this book called The First Days of School by Harry Wong. Have you ever read it?
Oh yeah,
I
yeah. Oh yeah.
mean, it was like, again, the heavens opened up. And what I realized, especially as a math teacher, like you've got to create that buy-in. And it starts with the first day or days of school of establishing that classroom, making it an enjoyable place to be. So that changed my whole approach to teaching.
So do you guys still give that book out to new staff? Do you know, or?
I don't know if they do or not, to be honest with you. I'll have to find that out.
When I was a first year teacher in Sarasota County, Florida, we also got that book. So great minds must think alike on
Yes, yeah.
what to give new teachers. It's a little bit older now. I'm not gonna lie.
It
It's
is.
been around for a few
Yes.
years, but okay. So next question is what is one phone app that has positively impacted your life?
Oh, another easy one, Slack. Have you ever used Slack before?
My brother, who works in a business, has been trying to convince me on Slack, but he has not convinced me. So, Dil, why don't you convince me about Slack?
All right, let me tell you why it's so great. Number one, it enables you to kind of keep all of your conversations organized. Like one of the reasons why email can be such a pain is it's so hard to keep things organized into a thread of thoughts. So with Slack, you can create like literally these discussion channels. In fact, after we got together for the NDP on a national level in Chicago, I said to the group, hey, why don't we create a Slack channel where we can keep sharing ideas as national distinguished principles of, how to motivate staff, how to start off the year, what are our concerns? So we have a Slack channel just for the NDPs of 2020.
Okay, so I was wondering. Okay, so you've got that with the NDPs. Have you used that at all with your staff?
Honestly, no, we have not. Only because we have some other tools that we've used. So, sometimes when you have too many things in one organization, it can also detract. Whereas, like I said, this is very specific for a discussion, thought, or
Okay.
thread. So,
Okay.
we use a whole host of other Google apps. So we've got plenty on our plate here.
Okay, well, I've just heard some other school leaders with maybe a little bit, larger administrative teams or superintendents have used Slack, and I still haven't been convinced. But you are not the first person who has talked about all the wonderful, cool things that Slack does to make communication easier. So I'm getting closer and closer to trying to figure it out and pull the trigger. Okay, so you mentioned that this Thai place you go to used to be a gas station. This is the gas station slash convenience store question, which is when you are traveling and you talked about you are in a really cool location. You are like 4 hours to New Orleans, 3 hours to Nashville, 3 hours to Atlanta. You're in an awesome spot. If you are stopping at a gas station convenience store, what is your go-to item?
This is such an embarrassing answer, but it would have to be gum. I love gum. Gum
Okay.
and sour candies, I will say, are like sweet tart ropes. Oh,
Okay. Sweet tart
like
rope. What kind
buy
of,
me
I
some of
mean,
that.
what kind of gum? What kind of gum?
I like cinnamon gum or bubble gum. I still like I have good childhood memories about bubble gum. And
Okay.
I think that's because my mom would not typically give me money, like a quarter for the gumball machine. So, to this day, I'm all about gumball machines.
That is so okay. So bubble gum. I haven't even bought a pack of bubble gum for 20 years. Is there still like Bubblicious and Bubble Yum and all that, or what? Where are
Oh
we at
yeah.
these days? What?
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, it's all there. It's all there. Hubba Bubba is my gum of
Hubba Bubba.
choice. Hubba Bubba.
There you go, guys. You come to the show for education, you get Hubba Bubba.
Hubba Bubba.
Okay, I feel like you've been ultra successful, but can you recall a job you applied for but did not get?
Oh, yeah. So actually, I had applied for one more position before becoming an assistant principal at another school. And in fact, the principal had encouraged me to apply for that job. I wasn't even quite thinking about it, and it didn't happen. And I'll be honest with you, at first, I was kind of disappointed that it didn't happen, maybe even a little bit upset. But my mom always told me, listen, girl, everything happens for a reason.
Yep.
And truthfully, if that had occurred, then I wouldn't have ended up in this current role,
Hmm.
where I got the opportunity to work with Dr. Carrington and then to become the principal of this particular school. So everything happens for a reason, and I'm glad it happened.
People like hearing that story. They hear from you. You're so well spoken. You're highly successful at 2020 Alabama principal of the year. And they're like, oh, okay, she didn't get an administrative. Everybody feels like on their first try, if they don't get the job, they're a failure or, oh, I give up. It's like, listen, everybody has these stories. So thank
Right.
you for sharing that. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. I agree with you. I say that all the time. Everything happens for a reason.
Well, and I think sometimes we have our greatest growth when we've experienced a bit of failure. And that has been so true in my role as an educator.
Cool. What is your best tip for being productive?
Have a really great organized calendar. And I have migrated to using a Google Calendar where every day, I follow that. And if there's something I don't get done, I push it off to the next day. But that's kind of like my job sequence and way of remembering what to do and when it's coming up and so forth. So Google Calendar and using it, efficiently and effectively.
What is one big goal you are currently working on?
To slow down a little bit, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
and to spend time on myself and my family. So, I've just been so laser focused on so many things that I've also realized I can't neglect my well-being and my boys. I have a son who's going to be off to college next year. I'm really not sure how we got here. And I realized, okay, I just need to be more mindful of my surroundings, specifically my personal life. So that's my challenge to myself right now.
You look really young to have a son in college.
Well, he's almost in
Or
college.
almost in college. I thought you were going to say he's off to preschool.
Well, thank you.
Cool. Very cool. Very cool. Okay. Is there anything else that we did not talk about that you would like the audience to know?
Well, we talked about a lot of things, but
We did.
I will say this. Maybe the thing that we didn't touch upon was just the importance of having the passion for the work that we do as leaders and the importance of, especially work with kids. I think the work we do is so important that if that passion should go out, we need to reignite it. And if you can't reignite it, you need to step away from the role. I tell that to teachers: when you no longer get up excited about what you're doing, our job is too important. We're affecting kids.
Yeah.
That if we're not passionate and excited to get up in the morning and come to work, we need to move on and find something else that we will be good at, because it's just too important. Our kids are, I know that people say it all the time, our kids are our future. And I know that sounds so, what's a word, like
Cliche.
cliche. Yes, cliche.
Yeah.
Beautiful French word. Yes. But it's not. I really do believe that if we do our jobs well and set up these kids to be successful, it's going to be so important and valuable, again, at a worldwide level, that we just can't lose sight of that.
So there's probably a lot of people listening who say, oh man, there's a teacher who really needs to hear what you just said, that
Mhm.
maybe your heart's just not in it. We've all got those people in our buildings, unfortunately. It's just not the easiest conversation to have. People dread having that, to having that true heart to heart. Is there any other advice? You made it sound so easy, but I know it's difficult. Any other advice you have for having that conversation with a staff member?
Yeah, I think every year, again, going back to that why, I know we keep talking about the why, but I think always every year checking in on yourself with your why. Is my why still the same? And if it's not, then it's time for a pivot change. And so that's something I do every year. In fact, I'm about to do some not podcasts, but interviews with teachers in our building, just for all of us to understand and appreciate each other's whys. So, again, take that time to get to know your folks every year. Check in, and quite frankly, every year check in multiple times in the year with your staff, and what is your whys and where are you right now? I
Okay.
think that's really, really important and valuable.
That's a great point. I feel like you've already established that why in your building. You've been doing it for the last 4 years, so I could
Mhm.
see that's a great entry point into those conversations about
Mhm.
you've been hammering it home with your staff about your reason for being an educator. So it
Mhm.
makes it so that's a great point. Like if you've already done that, if you haven't done that at all, it can be kind of difficult to go in and have that conversation with the staff
Right.
member, if that makes sense. So
Right.
you have kind of done a great job of setting the stage for those conversations, it sounds like.
Well, I hope so. And like I said, I think the proof in the pudding is seeing just how well this staff comes together. And I talked about it before, but this idea of that we're a family and we're here to support each other. This is not Dil Uswatte school.
Mhm.
This is our school.
Sure.
The successes are shared successes. Yeah, the note on the door might say principal, but really and truly the leadership has happened from all different points of view, from student leadership to teacher leadership to parent leadership, you name it. This school is successful because of all the people in this building.
Okay. Hey, that was a great interview. I mean, I just loved the answers you gave, the passion that you have. Yeah, this was episode number 84 with Dr. Dill, the Rocky Ridge Elementary School principal, doing great things down there in Hoover, Alabama. Dr. Dill, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way? I mean, you've got some awesome ideas. If they want to follow up with you, how should they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the easiest would be to email me at D Uswatte. So that's DUSWATTE at Hoover, spelled HOOVER .K12.AL.US.
Awesome. Are you on social media too then, or do you
I
kind of stay away or?
I do have also a LinkedIn account. Dilhani.uswate would also be another way to get me.
Okay,
But probably email is the way to go. I'll definitely
cool.
respond to that.
Cool, cool, cool. Okay, hey, thank you so much for joining me. Are you got dinner coming here in a little bit or no?
Sundays are usually my night to cook something more elaborate. So I'm on my way home
Oh,
to make a chicken dinner.
Oh my gosh. I wish I was, that sounds awesome. You had Thai yesterday, some amazing Thai yesterday. Now we got the famous homemade chicken dinner coming tonight. Man,
Yeah.
you're that's awesome. That sounds amazing. So, hey, thank you so much. It was a fun interview. You're doing great things. I can see why you're very well liked and very well respected in your down there in Hoover. So,
Well, thank you for this opportunity, Jared. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And if this makes an impact in even one person's life, then I'm glad that we spent this hour together.
absolutely awesome. All right. Hey, have a good night. Enjoy that chicken dinner. Okay.
Sounds great.